The Galactic Confederacy had existed for 12,000 years. It stretched across 900 star systems and contained 47 different species. They had built their empire on trade, diplomacy, and when necessary, overwhelming military force. No civilization had ever challenged them and survived. No species had ever refused their terms and remained standing. The Confederacy was the oldest and most powerful political body in the known galaxy, and they knew it. When their scout ships discovered humanity, they were not impressed. The humans had barely left their home system. They had primitive, faster-than-light technology that the Confederacy had abandoned centuries ago. Their weapons were crude. Their ships were slow. Their population was tiny compared to the trillions that served under the Confederacy banner. The High Council looked at the reports and laughed. This species would be easy to absorb. They would accept the standard terms of integration, give up their sovereignty, and become another cog in the great machine. Every species did eventually. Ambassador Zethran was chosen to deliver the ultimatum. He was a tall creature with silver skin and 4 eyes that could see in multiple spectrums. He had forced compliance from 17 species in his career. He was considered the best at making lesser civilizations understand their place in the galaxy. He arrived at Earth with a fleet of 200 warships, each one capable of reducing a continent to glass. It was a show of force that had broken the will of empires far greater than humanity. The humans invited him to a meeting in their capital city. Zethran found them strange creatures. They were soft and weak-looking, with only 2 eyes and fragile bodies. They smiled too much. They asked questions about his journey and offered him refreshments. Zethran found their politeness irritating. Did they not understand what the fleet in their orbit meant? He delivered the terms without ceremony. Humanity would surrender all territorial claims beyond their home planet. They would provide 30% of their population for labor redistribution. They would dismantle their military and accept Confederacy governance. They would have 30 of their days to comply. Refusal would result in the complete destruction of their civilization. The terms were the same ones the Confederacy had given to hundreds of species before. Most accepted immediately. Those who refused were now extinct. The human leader, a woman with gray hair and tired eyes, listened to every word. She did not interrupt. She did not show fear. When Zethran finished, she simply nodded and said they would need time to discuss. Zethran granted them their 30 days, confident that humanity would submit like all the others. He returned to his flagship and waited. What Zethran did not know was that humanity had been watching the Confederacy for years. Their scout ships were primitive, yes, but they were also small and hard to detect. Human intelligence agencies had mapped Confederacy space, studied their technology, and analyzed their military tactics. They knew the Confederacy better than the Confederacy knew them. And they had been preparing. On the 29th day, the human leaders sent a message to Zethran's fleet. It was brief. It contained only 2 words. "We decline." Zethran received the message with amusement. He had hoped they would refuse. It had been too long since he had overseen a proper extermination. He ordered his fleet to begin bombardment protocols. 200 warships powered their weapons and prepared to turn Earth into a dead world. It should have been over in hours. The first sign that something was wrong came when long-range sensors detected objects emerging from behind Earth's moon. There were thousands of them, small and fast and radiating energy signatures that the Confederacy had never seen before. Zethran assumed they were missiles and ordered point defense systems to engage. But these were not missiles. They were something far worse. The objects were autonomous weapons platforms that humanity had been building in secret for decades. Each one was powered by a miniature antimatter reactor and armed with weapons that the Confederacy thought were theoretically impossible. They moved faster than anything the Confederacy had ever built. They communicated with each other through quantum entangled networks that could not be jammed. And there were 10,000 of them for every Confederacy ship. The battle lasted 14 minutes. 14 minutes to destroy a fleet that represented the pride of the Confederacy military. Zethron watched in horror as ship after ship vanished in brilliant flashes of light. His tactical officers screamed that their shields were useless, that their weapons could not track the human machines, that their communications were being systematically destroyed. By the time Zethron ordered a retreat, there was no one left to receive the order. His flagship was the last to fall. The human weapons did not destroy it immediately. Instead, they disabled its engines and weapons, leaving it drifting in space. Zethron understood the message. They wanted him alive. They wanted him to deliver a message of his own. A human shuttle docked with his crippled ship an hour later. The soldiers who boarded were nothing like the soft creatures Zethron had met on Earth. They wore powered armor that made them tower over his guards. They moved with perfect coordination, communicating through neural links that let them act as a single organism. They secured the ship in minutes without firing a single shot. His crew surrendered without resistance. The human commander removed her helmet and looked at Zethron with cold eyes. She was young, barely an adult by Confederacy standards, but she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had already won. She told him that he would be returned to Confederacy space with a message. Humanity was not interested in war. They were not interested in conquest. They simply wanted to be left alone. But if the Confederacy chose to continue this conflict, humanity would respond in kind, and their response would not be limited to defending their home world. Zethron asked her what she meant. She smiled and told him to check his communications logs. His flagship had been receiving data from Confederacy space throughout the battle. Data that should have been impossible to intercept. He looked at the logs and felt his blood turn cold. While his fleet had been dying in Earth orbit, human operations had been taking place across Confederacy space. 37 military installations had been destroyed. 12 shipyards had been reduced to debris. The Confederacy's primary communication network had been infiltrated and corrupted. False orders had been sent to fleet commanders across the Empire, creating chaos and confusion. 3 member species had received evidence of Confederacy crimes against their people, information that had been buried for centuries. 2 of them had already declared independence. All of this had happened in 14 minutes. The same 14 minutes it had taken to destroy Zethron's fleet. Humanity had not just defended their home. They had struck at the heart of the Confederacy itself, targeting the weak points that kept the Empire functioning. They had done more damage in a quarter of an hour than any enemy had managed in 12,000 years. Zethron was released as promised. His ship limped back to Confederacy space, with its engines barely functional and its crew traumatized. When he arrived at the capital world, he found chaos waiting for him. The High Council was in emergency session. Reports were flooding in from across the Empire. The damage was far worse than anyone had initially believed. The destruction of military assets was severe, but it was not the real problem. The real problem was the information that humanity had released. Every species in the Confederacy now knew the truth about how the Empire had treated them. They knew about the mass relocations, the resource theft, the systematic suppression of their cultures. They knew about the secret prisons and the experiments and the assassinations. The Confederacy had maintained control through ignorance and fear. Humanity had destroyed both in a single stroke. 3 more species declared independence within a week. Then 7 more. Then 15. The Confederacy military tried to respond, but their command structure had been shattered. Admirals refused to follow orders from a council they no longer trusted. Ships defected to the rebellion. Entire sectors went dark as communication networks continued to fail. Zethron was brought before the High Council to explain what had happened. He told them the truth. Humanity had been watching them for years. Humanity had prepared for this moment with patience and precision. Humanity had not just built weapons to defend themselves. They had built weapons to end empires. And they had done it all while appearing weak and primitive, letting the Confederacy see exactly what they wanted them to see. The Council demanded to know how this was possible. How could a species so young and so small have accomplished so much? Zethran had no answer. He had spent his career believing that power came from size and age and resources. Humanity had proven him wrong. Their power came from something else entirely. It came from their refusal to accept the rules that others had written for them. The Confederacy tried to negotiate. They sent diplomats to Earth with offers of peace and partnership. The humans accepted their messages politely, but made no commitments. They did not need to. The Confederacy was already falling apart. Species that had been subjugated for millennia were rising up. Trade routes that had sustained the empire for thousands of years were collapsing. The great machine was grinding to a halt, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. Within a year, the Galactic Confederacy existed only in name. What had once been a unified empire spanning 900 systems had fractured into hundreds of independent nations. Some formed new alliances. Some descended into civil war. Some reached out to humanity for guidance, hoping that the species which had brought down the empire might help them build something better. Humanity did not seek to rule the galaxy. They did not claim territory or demand tribute. They simply continued to exist, watching and waiting, ready to respond if anyone threatened them again. The message they had sent with their brief response echoed through the stars for generations. It was simple and clear. Do not mistake our silence for weakness. Do not mistake our patience for fear. We are not looking for war. But if you bring war to us, we will finish it. Zethran lived out his remaining years in quiet retirement on a small world far from the chaos he had helped create. He often thought about that day in Earth orbit, about the moment when everything changed. He had gone there to break a primitive species. Instead, he had witnessed the birth of something new. Humanity had not just survived their first contact with the galaxy. They had rewritten the rules of what survival meant. And the galaxy would never be the same. The story of the brief response became legend among the stars. Parents told it to their children as a warning. Military academies studied it as a case of perfect strategic planning. Philosophers debated what it meant about the nature of power and civilization. But everyone agreed on one thing. When humanity said no, they meant it. And the consequences of ignoring that simple word had left the greatest empire in history in shambles. 2 words, 14 minutes, an empire in ruins. That was the legacy of humanity's first and only war with the Confederacy. And it was a legacy that would never be forgotten.